Good evening, everybody. Let me do a little talk. I've been waiting to not speak too much on all the issues that are going on, but I'm a news reader, and there's many that I skipped the last few days. And then I listened, when I got home, I saw some of my friends today, and I try to catch about 30 minutes of some type of update. Sometimes I have to go to what many refer to as a liberal site, which is the radio, not PBS, but the NPR, because I want to get some information, though they're slanted to the left of the aisle. On the talk radio, primarily AM, you'll have news people, but for the 30 minutes that I would have time to listen as I'm doing some work, they were going to get to the stories of the day. But today happens to be day 2 of a trial that should be important to cover. I actually checked online on CNN. They had like hour for hour. But what I would like to do is, today Mr. Trump also made big news because he angrily tweeted for Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, to stop this witch hunt. And things are getting under Mr. Trump's skin, but there are reasons that they're getting under his skin. First, as this trial began to open yesterday, I believe this is the one in Virginia, but he's got another one he has to go to. So this is a little news, a little politics. But the case that Mr. Mueller and his team have made against Mr. Mannafort, who was a campaign guy for like 40-something days for Mr. Trump, they basically are presenting a case that says, and it's strange, but his loan applications, various loan applications in his business as a lobbyist and so forth, he kind of didn't do them right. And then maybe he hid money as a lobbyist. But our government looked at all of this. I believe it was in 2008 or 9, so about 10 years ago. And when they looked at this, there's a lot of people that are connected that are like lobbyists, but maybe they didn't register. The Podesta group, they do this, and they are Democrats, and they work with the Clintons. They did the same thing. Now, as I read all the things yesterday and today on all the news sites, they also are presenting a case that basically says their chief witness is a man by the name of Rick Gates. Okay, Rick Gates worked under Mr. Mannafort, or for Mr. Mannafort, handling the finances and lobbying. Now, all of these things, lobbying and all, is legal. That's how much of our government works. Various people, whether they're corporations, medical, pharmaceutical, or even countries. But if you're going to try to present a particular point of view, and I could do the whole kind of history of the Ukrainian situation, but if you're going to represent a foreign government as a lobbyist, you're allowed to do that as well. It's just you got to register. Now, people on both sides of the aisle have never registered. The Podesta group is one. And so this man, Rick Gates, is supposedly going to be the chief witness against the crimes of Mr. Mannafort. And in the opening day of the trial yesterday, the defense, Paul Mannafort's defense, who they're trying to put in prison for the rest of his life, is Rick Gates himself. They're going to call, he's going to be like one of the witnesses or one of the people that the defense is going to use, because they claim that Mr. Rick Gates, being in charge of a lot of these finances, did some swindling himself, not only for Paul Mannafort, but for other people that he represented in this whole type of lobbying type thing. And then as I read it, indeed, the Justice Department, the Mueller people, and all these government people, they know that Rick Gates has been criminal because they had another case with this man who did the same thing. So for Mr. Mueller to have used Rick Gates, sort of like, we're going to go after Mr. Mannafort, but yet they know that Rick Gates himself has stolen money or misrepresented the people he's worked for, That's questionable that they would have gone this far with this type of thing. Now, why did Mr. Trump get mad? You know, they're going after his entire family. The New York office, who's highly political, they're now examining the Trump Foundation. And if they can imprison Ivanka, the children, also news kind of came out this week that they're trying to get Trump Jr. on charges where they can also imprison him, has to do with a particular meeting that he had with the Russians. Nothing was done illegally at all in that meeting. Some Russian people. And this came out the last year, but did his father know about the meeting or not? Though there was nothing illegal. Now, you say, but John, this is how politics is. It's never been this way to go after his kids like that. It's never been this way. Especially when we knew that Mrs. Clinton and her daughter, Chelsea, ran a Clinton Foundation, which has documented that the crimes that those people committed with her husband, Bill Clinton, after doing particular deals for uranium and with Russia itself, and then receiving money while she was Secretary of State, favorable treatment on deals. Now, if you want to play hardball like that, you don't do it with people's kids. That's what I think set Mr. Trump off. Because as I looked at this, and I looked at the case so far for the last 2 days, the judge in this case has rebuked the Mueller people. Because what they're showing is evidence of the crimes. They had photographs of Paul Mannafort's closets with expensive clothing. That was going to be introduced as evidence. Let's show how much lavishness, and I'm not a lavish person, but the judge himself said being rich is not a crime. He's rebuked this case already multiple times. Now, do you think these men, Mr. Mueller and his team, are just men? You know, the record shows that they have committed criminal acts. Mr. Mueller actually has, I won't do the whole anthrax case, everything else, but he has a man on his team that you hope people are just when they're doing investigations. And it's not Rod Rosenstein, who is the Deputy Attorney General, who also has conflicts of interest in all of this. Mr. Mueller would have conflicts of interest because he tried to get the position, not FBI director, he's former FBI director, but he met with Mr. Trump the day before he became special prosecutor, which he should have immediately recused himself. He was trying to get a position under Trump administration, Bob Mueller, and he was turned down, and the next day he began the investigation. But Mr. Mueller also has a man on his team, Weinstein. I know Harvey Weinstein's famous, but it's a name, something like that. And this man actually went after other people in the past and purposefully withheld exculpatory evidence and put some people in prison. And they knew that they had evidence that would show some people were innocent, and they hid that. And when you do that as a lawyer and all, you should not only not ever practice law again, but you should never be on such a high-profile case where you're saying to the public, oh, we're going to be upfront with Trump's children. We're going to be upfront. And you had a history like that. These are the same Robert Mueller investigators that are now doing this. And then that case was overturned 9-0 by the Supreme Court, meaning the Supreme Court had ruled in the past, after they imprisoned people, that they did wrong and criminal acts by withholding evidence. This is the same group. Now, I would be upset, regardless of what side, when Chelsea Clinton, a child of a former president, admitted openly, because it came out the last few years, that their corporation called the Clinton Foundation, she admitted, and it came out like in a text or something, Dad, Bill Clinton, and his friends are using this like illegally for their own personal profit. You would have more evidence and more crimes being Miss Clinton was Secretary of State, and you could have gone after those Clintons and their families. But we as a society have kind of said, we want to not go after kids. And you might say, well, Trump Jr. plays a role in the administration. I understand that. But these are types of things that even in a normal thing, you would say, no, we give leeway. And what I see them doing in this case, the prosecution in this case, Mr. Mueller, their chief witness to bring Mr. Manafort down and send him to prison for life is Rick Gates. That's their chief witness. They've already said they might not even call him. He's a witness. He's not a defendant. They might not even call him to the stand because the Manafort defense can reveal that Mr. Gates not only was criminal with him, but the U.S. Justice Department also has cases against him where Rick Gates was criminal with others in all of these dealings. Then also, for those who follow all this is a one-time post, it said in the news that Mr. Mueller also now has referred the Podestas to the New York Attorney General's Southern District in case there were any crimes they committed. And then some question, why New York? Because they didn't operate out of New York. Because he might have a way to say, oh, look, we hope we would never have to bring this up, but we'll throw that out. Like, look, we're investigating both sides, and they're not. They're not. They're not. Now, in all of the dealings the last year, I also believe it's a witch hunt. Not that there were not things to look at. Not that there was not legitimate problems with the hacking of the DNC, Democratic National Committee computers. But there was enough to say, you don't go this far with it. Now, the media is a scam in this country because the little 20-minute thing that I just did, I just wanted to show you that that's how that case went for the last 2 days. And for any prosecutor, Mr. Robert Mueller and his team, to have a star witness to say, we believe that Mr. Manafort committed crimes, and you know you already made agreements with that same man, Rick Gates, because not that he was in with Mr. Manafort or in with other people, but that he swindled other people that he worked for in the same type of Manafort thing. Even if this is a not guilty, they also have other things on Paul Mannafort that they want to go forth with for some other areas. But what disturbs me about it is when you're talking about a presidential impeachment, resignation, or removal, or possibly shooting for, like Mr. Joe Scarborough on MSNBC said one day, we're going to put you and your kids in prison. And I heard another reporter, she used to be from New York Times, questioning whether or not we can get sufficient charges on some of Trump's family that they would face execution. Not the thing that went on the last 2 weeks where John Brennan, Comey, and all these people said treason, but this was maybe a year ago now. They said, some said, we're seriously looking at whether or not the charges would rise to the level of the execution of some of the family members of Mr. Trump. Now, all of this is a debacle, and it only is able to continue because of the media, because of the way the media is. When some of these exact same things, you know, Mr. Podesta, the media did a big thing on the Podestas. Mr. Clinton has records of, I believe he flew with Mr. Podesta to Bangkok a lot of times. And it was kind of like a little rumor that there was like a sexual promiscuity that you can get away with in Bangkok. So people thought, man, you know, and also a particular man's home that, you know, they were like questions. And then there were like texts that people found. Today wasn't even looking for it. Somebody showed a link that even the art, that they have pictures of one of the Podestas in the art, that's public, you can find. I didn't look at it, but they said the actual art showed child pornography. So you had like people question, oh, were they engaged in a lot of this stuff? Then the famous InfoWars out of Austin, Alex Jones, they actually said oh, there might be a pizza place connected. And then the media came out and said, oh, look at that conspiracy. But if you look close enough, it's possible that people that believe, well, anything might go, NAMBLA and maybe some people on the more extreme liberal side believe what's wrong with certain things. Now, as I looked at that, I didn't get into the conspiracy, but the media immediately said, it's a scam, it's a sham, it's a hoax. Some of you are not familiar with what I just mentioned, but that was something that came out like the last year, a couple of years. So, in essence, the people that Mr. Mueller is actually working with, he didn't just give them immunity, meaning they had committed a crime along with Mr. Mannafort. He gave them immunity, Rick Gates, meaning they cut a deal with him for crimes he himself possibly committed against Mr. Mannafort, meaning Rick Gates possibly was swindling and committing crimes. And did Mueller and them know this? Of course, because they actually settled with Rick Gates where he did it to other people. That's a shame. That's a scam. That would be like saying, we're going to try somebody for murder. And the guy says, I didn't murder anybody. You see, we got a chief witness. He was with you that day. But then you find out the other witness actually committed the murder, and the guy at the top didn't even know about it. That's equal to some of what they're doing. So, this is day 2 of the famous thing. Mr. Trump, I think, was mad because the last few days, it seems like Mr. Mueller is going to change his strategy. Because collusion really is not a crime. We've discussed this the last few years. But conspiracy to defraud the government. And they're aiming that at his son. This country would never stand for going after Mr. Obama's children. This country would never stand for even going after Chelsea Clinton when she exposed knowledge of the crimes that her father was committing with that foundation, with using it for a personal piggy bank. But yet they decided in the New York Southern District to begin investigating. And Trump's daughter's clothing thing went out of business, closed up this last week. You're not just happy to say, let's look in an honest and sincere way. You have people in the media and MSNBC that called for the imprisonment. We're going to get your kids. Joe Scarborough said that. He's a disgrace, that man. He's a disgrace, that man. Chris Matthews, you are not productive in anything you're doing. And I read the San Antonio paper now, but I also keep up with the news. Our local district attorney did a just thing, a good thing. But sadly, there was a woman, Chastity Herrera maybe, but last year she was accused of in the death of her young baby. And they've been holding that girl. Now, she denied it. She didn't kill her child. But the DNA evidence finally came in. Under the fingernails of that child was the DNA of the mother's boyfriend. I'm assuming we're going to have other charges. But they dropped that case and let her out of jail 2 days ago. Now, the DA simply did what was just, Mark Gonzalez, what was right. The evidence showed something that maybe they did not expect because they wouldn't have been holding that girl. I think she's from Rumstown. But the team that Mueller has, particularly one of those guys, he's been known to hide evidence, meaning he knew that there was evidence that would exonerate people he was going after. And he imprisoned those people. So what Trump would be dealing with is even if they knew that Ivanka, his daughter, might be innocent of something, these people have a mentality, let's get them anyway. If we can get the family in jail for a couple years, maybe the wife. And even if we lie to do it, and then it goes to the Supreme Court, and Mueller's team will overturn 9-0. That's so unprecedented. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court. When they looked at Mueller's team, the people he has on his team right now, they said, you are so criminal, even the 4 liberal judges or the 5 liberal judges and the 4 conservatives all said, wow, we've never seen such criminality ever in a legal group. Mueller put that man on this team. Would you trust that group? John, then how do they get away with it? Because the media is tremendously manipulative. And remember, some, I just give you one example, have called, let's put Trump's kids in prison. And this week, they're trying to do that. That's going to be the next thing. They don't know when to stop. Do you think we'll live? No, I would just say I'm not a Republican, not a Democrat. But I believe that anybody that would vote for that side of the aisle at all, because of the abortion issue, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, here will be the second prophecy we give on her. It's not a threat. I believe that she will pass by natural causes, not by my hands, nor am I advocating anybody. But by the word of the Lord, the scripture says he removes people from office. God will do that. And she's old. She said the other day, I'm going to stay in the court for another 5 years. But you've never sincerely looked at the tragedy of what you have justified. You've never even looked at those abortion pictures of kids fully formed and dismembered. And you mock people that have brought that up as a sincere, legitimate question. So that's the word of the Lord. I believe she'll pass away within a short period of time. Because not only is she unable to seriously use discernment to say children that are that developed should never be severed in any civilized society. But she has a celebration over that. This group of followers, they were, even the media I heard, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG, like, wow, look seriously. Look seriously at issues. None of this stuff would have ever happened if it wasn't for the collusion of media. I can go down the road, one after the other, and show you absolute manipulation. How many times I saw over the years in the colder times, when there were legitimate questions, they would have an editorial, the face of a Dana Milbank, or the other guy I used to mention, Tom Whitehurst. And when it was a serious issue about the funding of Planned Parenthood, that a lot of people, they would mock, they would laugh and joke, thinking you don't even have a serious bone in you. You know, the other day, I'll end with this, because this is not going to be a repeated video. Oh, I pray for, I have a regular prayer time. I told you guys about that a lot. And I pray for sweet little Catherine, who's a black girl that I send $30 a month. Now it's $35 a month. She's in Africa. And her name is Catherine. And it's just the child support, Children International. But then, lo and behold, like 6 months ago, they just sent me a text. We've increased your, I didn't, normally you should ask for an increase of a donation. They said, because of our expenses, we've increased your donation to $35 a month. And it said, but if you have any problems with it, just, let us know and we'll drop it to 30. Now, I was mad that they did that on their own. But I'm not sending the 30 or now 35 because of them, but because of Catherine. And so I just let it go through. But then a few months later, it said, we will be increasing it. We're giving a notice and it's going to go up. They changed the wording a little because I'm sure they lost a percentage of people that donate just out of anger. But I didn't decrease it. But then I realized part of my prayer time and that intercessory prayer, which is a Monday and Friday, during that time, I'd then go and, Lord, I lift up little Catherine to you. She's regularly prayed for. This is a new photo of Catherine. I've not looked at it yet. And then I pray for the children of the earth, go through the whole thing, and then I thought, I would have felt so bad because she's a regular part of my prayer time, sweet little Catherine. But my anger that they did that without my knowledge, I haven't seen her picture now. I hung one up in my room a few years ago, and they write me, I'm sure they don't know I pray for Catherine for the rest of my life now. And it's not just like a thing. But children are precious in the sight of God. And when we deal with a severe issue, that's why I believe by the word of the Lord, today's date is what? 8/1/18. I believe by the word of the Lord that Justice Ginsberg will pass on, not by violence, nor am I advocating it. But I believe by the word of the Lord, she will pass on soon. Because none of those things are a joke. And all the children that will be aborted right at the end, fully formed, all of those aborted children, they have a right to live. They have a right for anybody on any side of the aisle. Oh, here's my sweet cat. I've not seen her picture now. Let's see, do you see? Of course, I had a picture of Catherine when she was a young girl. And I have not looked at it. It's the first one I looked at. So that's sweet Catherine. Catherine Numfukwe. I should write her and say, I pray for you, honey, which I do regularly. So, let's not go after the children. Please let the Joe Scarboroughs go away. I believe because they found that worker under his office dead, and he claims I had nothing to do with it, but you joked about the death of that girl on the Don Imus show. There was a young congressional worker, a female that worked for Joe Scarborough. They found her dead alone in his office. And he resigned from Congress not too long after that. They said she accidentally fell and died, something happened. Okay? But then he was on the Don Imus show, and Don Imus brought it up. And Joe Scarborough said, they now muted that video. Robert Redford, the actor, tried to listen to it, and it's muted. You can see that on YouTube. He said, oh, that's the girl I had sex with and killed. You should immediately be off the air. To even make a joke like that in the day and age that we live in? All right, so we'll end with that.